but it looks like just about everybody is here. And I've got 6 o'clock, so let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, September 8th at 6 p.m. To welcome you all here. My name is Sean Eystone, and I'd like to welcome my fellow board members, JP Clausen, Charlie Eastham, Janet Godwin, Ruthina Malone, and Lisa Williams, and Superintendent Matt Degner, and Recording Secretary Kim Colvin is here. Remind anybody that's on the Zoom call that we're not going to be responding to the Q&A or chat features live. We do our best to get answers if we need to at a later date or even as they're kind of coming along in conversation, but there will be opportunity for community comment in a little bit. But before that, the first thing on our agenda is an ICEA update. So hopefully Brady knew that that was happening. And if not, I'm sure he'll wing it. So Brady, you got anything for us?
Yeah, I did know, thank goodness, that it was happening. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Good evening, President Eystone, Vice President Malone, directors, and members of our administrative team, and as well as the public that is joining tonight. As we gather tonight for this, our regularly scheduled meeting, it does go without saying that the Iowa City Education Association is disappointed in the ruling issued today from the Johnson County District Court. We remain committed to working with you and the Iowa State Education Association to do our very best to protect the health and safety of our students, staff, and community, while also providing as many safe student engagement opportunities as possible in our local community. The lawsuit was really, truly not about how we started on day one in the Iowa City schools today. Rather, it was our effort to retain the right of our locally elected officials to partner with our local health officials to make the very best decisions for our local community. So while we are disappointed in the ruling, we remain deeply committed to our partnership with our board of directors and administrative teams and staff at our central office and every school building in our district. It has been appropriately and widely noted that since June, the staff at ICCSD have worked for hours and hours on our return to learn plans. And I want to take a moment tonight. I think it's critical to note the role that you, our board of directors, have played in that effort. And this is not to scare off any prospective people who are looking to join the board, but rather it's just to acknowledge that the work that you all did. So between June 9th and September 1st, you conducted formal public meetings of the full board on 14 different occasions. Those 14 meetings lasted nearly 40 hours in length in total, and are certainly not inclusive of the other committee meetings conducted by portions of the board. I don't worry, I'm not going to leave out policy and governance in my shout out. The hours spent in formal public meetings also do not even come close to touching the length of time that you all spend answering emails and phone calls, as well as preparing for our board meetings. So tonight, on behalf of the Iowa City Education Association, I want to extend just a special thank you to everything that you did to prepare us for this, our first day of school, a day that had some ups and downs, but a day that I think was 6 months in coming, and by all measures, a really good and successful start to our school year. And we absolutely just could not do that without your continuous support and advocacy and partnership. So thank you.
Thank you, Brady. Appreciate those kind words. It absolutely is a partnership, and we look forward to continuing that through this trying times that we are in. So we are going to move into our community comment section, and if folks would like to speak, they need to use the raise hand feature, and if they do, we will call on you and you will have 4 minutes to speak. So we'll do that now if anybody would like to raise their hand. All right. There are no hands up. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of our agenda today. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve today's agenda.
Second.
All right, Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open.
I'm not getting it, Kim, but
Hmm.
I will vote
I've
yay.
got, okay, I've got Ruthina's response and that's the only one. Thank you, Director.
Yeah,
Nothing came up for me either.
I'm not seeing it either, Kim.
Maybe I'll close it.
Again?
I'm going to close it and reopen it. Okay, did that come through that time?
Nothing for me.
No.
You
I'm just
did for
gonna-
me?
Ruthina, you're special.
I'll just do a roll call if that's okay.
Yeah.
Godwin,
Aye.
Clausen,
Aye.
Malone,
Yay.
Istone,
Yay.
Eastham,
Yay.
Williams.
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right. We can move on to the consent agenda. Anybody have any questions or comments on the bills first?
No, I didn't have any. I think it was myself and Lisa that reviewed them this month. And maybe other people, but I didn't have any questions.
No, Ruthina's right. I reviewed them too. No questions.
All right. Any items that directors would like to pull? All right. If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, Kim, let's try this again.
Again, online voting is open.
Hey, I got that one.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thank you, everyone. And we'll move on down to discussion items. And the topic is on everybody's mind, return to learn. I know it was our first day and it was a fun first day. I know the power was out at my house for a while and that was happening kind of across the district. So I know that caused even more angst on a super fun day. But it worked out. My kids got on and life was good. So I'll throw it over to Matt and see what all you want to lead with today.
Sure. Thank you, President Istone. Welcome, everybody. We did have a first day of school, albeit a different one, doing it virtually. Heard some positive feedback, a few bumps, but we're going to give you a few highlights of kind of what happened on the first day, just as a quick review, because we've had a ton of information throughout the last several months, but we'll be sure to plan and prepare some of that. To show you some of that planning and preparation we've done again and kind of dust that off and show you what the kids and staff experienced today. We do plan to also give you an enrollment update, a short conversation around special ed, food service update, some good news there, and then also a technology update about where we're at on those. And so those will be our big topics. I guess the first one I kind of just wanted to start off with, though, is our revolving one that we continue to always have. And we did talk to you about kind of the cycle of these conversations we would have. But when we look at our current positivity rate in the county, still being at, I think last time I looked here this afternoon, 22.2%, puts us on track with our metrics to again request a 2-week extension of that waiver. That puts us, if we make that request here sometime following this meeting, we would at least have the knowledge of that permission. The one other thing I would note in making that request this time, we've seen numbers continue to trend down here over the last several days, those positivity rates coming back to maybe more where they were at typically throughout the summer. And at the last time when we recommended the hybrid model, some of the numbers that looked more comparable to the time of that conversation. And so while I think it's important to still meet the timeline for a request, I do think it's also something that we should consider about if we're granted that request. We should come back to a conversation around that next week to see if we do want to extend that for that full what would become a 1-month time period, or if numbers have continued to trend in a positive way and we think we could even come back sooner than that month, that we could also entertain that conversation at the point. But really from the schedule we outlined to you on the first about how we would use our metrics and then apply for that permission, we are well above those metrics still, as our current county positivity rates sits at 22.2. But we have seen some positive and heard positive news from the health department and from UIHC that it does seem like those positivity rates are staying contained to the 18 to 24-year-old population, which is kind of an anomaly for our county as they've described it, that we haven't seen some of that spread go into different areas. And so while, again, I'll reiterate one more time, we think it's important just from a timing perspective to work on that request this week. I do think it would be of value to have some conversation again next week about what that exactly means. And then we should know one way or another if we've been granted that permission or not, to determine next steps for what happens following this first 2-week time period. So I'd take any questions on that before I kind of turn it over to the team to talk to you about some of the other items I mentioned there in the onset.
And have we heard anything from the DE on, we're only on day 1 today of our current waiver. Would they say, why are you asking for another one when you haven't really used up this one? Or is this I know it's a time frame expectation,
Right.
but as well?
Well, I think that's a great question, Sean, and one we thought a lot about. And if we think about when they granted us this permission, I'm not sure it was a full 2 weeks, but it was a week and a half or at least 10 days about when they granted this one in advance. And so if we didn't necessarily submit that request until Wednesday, Thursday, we'd really be operating on that same time frame from when they granted this initial request in advance of our first day of school. And so I think we're still in that time frame. And so they could come back with different information. Obviously, things have changed as we went along with all of this, but it would seem that it's on the same time frame from when we submitted this last request that was granted to us, that we'd be asking again to look at the following 2 weeks and if we had permission to do that. The other thing I would just remind the board is the permission means, to not meet the 50% threshold. So of course, we had some other conversations around different hybrid models as we go along, and I'm not necessarily saying we should open that all back up and entertain everything on the table again. But remember, just because we have permission doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly what we have to do. I just think it's important for us to have that information, to have an informed conversation, especially knowing our rates have been very fluid. They haven't been very constant here. They spiked going up towards 36, 37%. And then now we've seen them drastically come back down in that regard, or I shouldn't say drastically come back down, but we've seen some things start to come back down. So we just need to keep an eye on them every day and make the best decision as we can and give ourselves enough time to plan for being flexible.
And Matt, as you said, we did talk about different hybrid options, and one of those was bringing back even smaller groups. Have you and your team been able to look at how that would work? And if so, when would we see any information on that?
Sure, we'll talk a little bit about that tonight when we hit some of these other parts. I think part of that conversation, Ruthina, really bleeds into this next part that we're talking about too, is if, how long of a time period are we in this type of a scenario? I mean, if we were going to be in an online experience for a long period of time, then I think certainly, we would need to move on something like that. If this is a pretty quick experience for us, and if we go back to July, this is kind of what we talked about, right, guys? That we thought a month, get the university students to the acclimated to the community, and then after a month, we'd review it. So in all, we're kind of on that same trajectory that we've talked about all along. And so if after a month we think things are up and going, we can get to our hybrid plan. I think that would be a great position for us to be in, considering all the factors we've had to deal with over the course of this. If it's going to be something that would be longer than that, and for some reason we see positivity rates going a different direction, then I think certainly, Ruthina, we have some work to do on that. And we do have some ideas about how we could do that. I think for right now, it's trying to think about what are those most immediate needs for students, and that's what we'll talk a little bit about here later. So I hope that addressed your question, Ruthina.
So Matt, this is Charlie. 2 questions really. So applying for another waiver early on in the 2-week period doesn't mean that if the state says wait, or no, you can't have it now, we could do it again towards the end of towards the latter part of that 2-week period, if the positivity rates are still up.
Yeah, we can ask anytime. Yep, we can certainly ask anytime, Charlie. So we could, even if they say no, the timing's off on this one, we could come back at a later time.
Okay, thanks. All right, okay. And this is off the waiver thing a little bit. Can we talk about the availability or what we could do to increase the number of students and staff we can test as we enter an on-site model of some kind.
Are you talking about actually performing COVID testing now, Charlie?
Yes, right.
So, Chase, do you want to take a little bit about what we found out with the health and safety team around the COVID testing and our ability to do that, and then the insurance perspective on that?
Sure.
Sorry.
And
Throw that to you here.
evening, everybody. We did check into that, Charlie, and what we're being told is that we cannot actually perform tests for COVID as an organization. We checked with our insurance carrier and they said that we're not covered for it. And we said, well, could we be covered for it? And they said, no, that we need to refer people to a health provider to do those tests, that our liability insurance will not protect us if we offer those tests as a school district. So the health and safety team, and we can talk more about this either tonight or next week, really put some good procedures in place for us to track and to follow up with individuals and to refer them to doctors as we or to other medical providers as we try to provide that additional layer of protection for students and staff. But unfortunately, we can't provide tests as a school district.
And could we contract with the provider to do testing on site in the district?
It's something we could, I don't have the answer off the top of my head. It's something we could,
Okay.
we could consider, or we could look into, I should say.
Okay, thank you.
So I think unless there's other questions with that, you kind of know our plan moving forward with that 2-week request. I want to make sure we continue to talk about Ruthina's point too, as far as what that means. You know, where I was going with some of that is originally we had talked about a 40% hybrid plan and something in that regard. So I think there's with that 40% plan, remember it was the Wednesday off. And so that's why I'm saying I'm not sure how many of these options we want to go back to, but as we started to also look at specialized groups of students, we quickly got to about the same percentage of students that we would be doing in a hybrid plan. And so if we had a 2-week permission or there's some creative ideas we would bring back to the table, even if we wanted to do something on site during that permission period that's been granted, but that wasn't fully offsite. And so there's a lot of logistical challenges with that. But the first thing we need to answer is, do we even have the permission extended? And then if we have the permission extended and it's going to happen for a month, do we want to start something sooner? If we know we're going to have to get to a 50% threshold after a month, does it make sense to start anything smaller sooner, knowing that we're going to quickly ramp up to that 50% threshold in our hybrid plan? And so all of that said, saying we need to request the permission, hopefully have the answer back by the 15th and talk about what those next couple weeks are certainly going to look like. We'll have better information on the county positivity rate. One other thing I should just mention that I was made aware of this morning that just came through to our email inbox now is the university is doing a UI Faculty Senate on the COVID-19 pandemic tomorrow. And so there's going to be local institutions, of course, the school district invited to that to also provide some additional detail and information. And I think it speaks to some of those data points I was talking about that we need to look and drill down a little further to about is the virus spread staying contained to the 18 to 24-year-old group? Is it growing out of that? What are some other health considerations we should be taking into account? So all of that information obviously we'll have and be prepared to share by next week as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and try to have the group share a little bit of highlights here from the first day and some of the other things we've been working on in the last week since we talked to you.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you. On the teaching and learning side, we're going to take 3 topics tonight, and we're going to talk about our PK through 12th grade online learning schedules. And I'm going to have Diane and Scott share a little bit about that. I'll talk about where we stand currently with enrollment, and then Glenn's going to share an update with special education. So Diane.
Good evening, everyone. I think we had a really good first day. You know, in hearing reports from all of our elementary principals, it was just exciting to see kids engaged in learning. Kids were singing, kids were getting books read to them, kids were getting math instruction. Some of that hasn't happened since mid-March, you know, so because we were in the voluntary program in the spring. So to have everyone engaged and back kind of in our schools was a great first start to our year. I asked the principals to kind of let me know what their percentage of engagement was. Most of them were able to get back to me, and it ranged a little bit. You know, we had some schools saying 3 kids, you know, didn't get on, and everybody else was there today. 9 kids, you know, in a school that had over 500 students maybe didn't get on. I mean, that's a good day on a regular first day of school. Then we had some schools that were more in the 85, maybe 83% of the kids were able to get on. But the one thing I heard, I think consistently from every school was they were just relentless in working with families to try to get their kids connected. So Kirkwood was one example. And Anita said, you know, we might have started the day missing 6 or 7 kids in a class. But what they did was they had their SFAs, their ELL teachers, their Title I teachers, their office staff, you know, IDS, Anita herself, they got those names right away. They got on the phone, they got on emails. And by the end of the day, they might have only been missing 1 or 2 kids in every class. And I heard that kind of throughout the day, that there was just this really strong effort to connect with kids, work through any tech issues. There were bumps, certainly bumps along the way. I think parents had different experiences. Some, you know, this was kind of a stressful day for them. And others, it probably went pretty smoothly. But I think with the support and the help from all of our staff, they just made it their mission to make sure kids were on, they were engaged, and they were ready to go. So for elementary students, their day today pretty much looked like a class meeting. They started off the day with a 30-minute class meeting where they were able to connect, make those connections with their new teacher and their new classmates. And then later on, they had a special, whether it was art or music or PE or library or guidance. They had one of those today, and that'll be repeated every day. So they'll always have a class meeting to start their day. They'll always have one of those specials every day. So those are 2 30-minute blocks that they are in synchronous learning. Then they also have a 20-minute math small group lesson and then a 20-minute reading small group lesson. So those started already today too, where students were able to connect with teachers kind of in a smaller group as well. And then in addition to that, there's some asynchronous learning that the teachers were able to assign and load in their Seesaw classes. So kids were able to work on that throughout the day whenever they weren't meeting synchronously with their teachers. One thing that we kind of added at the end, just in the last few weeks, we thought that we should maybe add a little office hour. So some time when the teacher would be free, that she wasn't busy teaching one of our lessons, that if kids had questions, they could just jump on a Zoom meeting and ask her quick, or send her an email, or a parent could send, you know, could call. And I heard from many schools that was really popular. We wouldn't think that maybe little elementary kids would clue into what an office hour is. And that's a great skill that's going to last them well as they go off to college too, thinking, well, I need to connect with my professors when they have some free time in their office hour. So that was well received today. Some of that was just working out more technology issues too, but I think hopefully gave the impression and the notice that we are here to help kids. We're going to help parents through this. We're going to do whatever we can to get kids connected to school.
So Diane, I'd just like to say your report on the work the staff was doing today to connect to kids is really outstanding. And we really want to commend the entire staff, Brady, for all of their efforts in getting kids engaged in this first day of online learning.
Thank you.
I second that, Diane.
Got it,
Well
right?
done.
They also all talked about how they reflected, sorry, Janet, how they reflected at the end of the day too, and, you know, thought about what worked well, what they can improve on, and how they can connect with those couple of kids that they didn't get to today. So they're not going to be at rest until they get 100% of kids actively engaged. Sorry, Janet.
No, I was just echoing Charlie, thanking you and the team, Brady's team too. Teachers and folks, we're back in school. I mean, it's amazing. And everyone did an amazing job, and it was different, but people, thank you to everyone for getting us back to school. It's amazing.
Thank you.
All right, do we want to hear from Scott about secondary?
Thank you, everybody. I took a little different approach. The normal thing I would do when I was in a building was I would be out and about into classrooms on the first day of school, on many of the first days of school. So today we started with 5th, 6th, and 7th period at the high school and 5 through 8 at the junior high. The high school would normally have a homeroom on this particular day, but we're going to postpone that till next week. But I got in 7 classes in those 3 periods today. I saw an AP government class, I saw an honors chemistry, I saw a futures class, I saw 2 English classes, one of the Kirkwood classes, Comp 1, and also a humanities class. And teachers were teaching bell to bell. You saw everything that you would see on a first day of school. You saw teachers talking about how to be engaged with their Canvas page and setting them up for the whole year. You saw a bunch of community building. I saw direct instruction on the Electoral College, and I saw the Comp 1 and Comp 2 teacher working through what good writing was and making it appealing to your audience. And I just saw all kinds of awesome stuff. The screens were full, just like your screen is full tonight. I don't know how many squares are on my screen, whether it's 30 or 36 or whatever it is, but all the screens I looked at were just as full as this. I saw technical issues. I saw people's audio go a little funky. I saw people's video go down for a little bit, but I absolutely saw staff members trying and engaging with kids and working to make connections. I heard one staff member say, turn your video on, please, because I'm already trying to work on connecting your name to your face. And so to me, it was different, but people were trying to do the stuff that they would always do on a first day of school. And it felt really good to me to be able to sit in a couple classrooms and watch it go.
Totally awesome, Scott. That's great.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to segue in and share a little bit about where enrollment stands. And of course, this will be fluctuating for a while, as it always does. Actually, it fluctuates every single day for us in a district our size. But just to give you some early indications of what we're seeing with overall enrollment, we have 14,125 students currently registered. And to get an apples to apples comparison, I did a little work with Austin Wells today. And our apples to apples comparison is actually from October 1st of last year. So, about 3 weeks difference here. If you compare that number to last year we stood around 14,278 students. So we're down slightly. And as a reminder, with that enrollment, approximately 45% of our students have chosen the online program option, with roughly 55% of our students picking the standard enrollment option. So with that, of course, they'll be engaged in whichever return to learn model that we're in. I think something interesting to note, a couple of things. One, that's with about 96% of our students e-registered. So with that remaining 4%, we know that we're going to ultimately lose some of those students to other districts, and secretaries will be eventually transferring records out. But we hope with that remaining 4%, we still see some of those students come into our schools as our own. One little bit, a tidbit of information that's interesting is to look at our homeschool enrollment, and we have seen an uptick there. So the numbers that I shared earlier do not include our homeschool students. And when you think about this next number I share with you, it really shows you the difference. And so if you bring these numbers that I share with you next back to the other numbers that I shared with you, we're about even enrollment wise. And of course, as we head towards October 1st and get more kids enrolled, that's definitely the trend that we want to see happening, is an uptick still with enrollment. And I'm being told by some of our people that most closely work in Power School that that's typically what we see happening from the first day of school until October 1st, which you would expect that, right? If not, but everybody's enrolled. But the difference in homeschool numbers right now, last year we had 149 students enrolled, and this year we have 260 students enrolled. So we see more of our parents exercising that option. One other thing, Adam took a stab at looking and using our Guide K-12 system to see if we could get an apples to apples comparison about day one from this year versus last year. And I'm going to have Adam share that tidbit with you next.
Yeah, you know, this year is unprecedented in so many ways, but as we look at the enrollment numbers to really try to figure out what do these numbers mean at this point, one of the points of comparison that I went back to is within our Guide K-12 system. Power School can't do this, but it can. I was able to compare our actual, how many students do we have enrolled? And we can break it down multiple ways, but you know, when I looked at including all students, so you know, pre-K through 12, homeschool or full-time enrollment, what I found when I compared this date today and that to this date last year is that we're down 76 students, but that was entirely explained by being down 78 in preschool. It's worth noting that last year at this point in time, preschool had started, and this year it has not. But if you were to just look K-12, we're actually up 2 students in terms of the number of students in the district. So that's interesting from the perspective of, you know, the students who we had are more or less accounted for. It's just a matter of that distribution, which, you know, per the numbers that Austin had pulled that Amy was referring to earlier, largely our enrollment difference looking at last year to this year is explained almost entirely by those students who are enrolled in the homeschool program.
Okay, our next topic is related to, Elisa's going to give a brief update around special education and specific to our remote learning plans that our IEP teams have been working hard to write, and then just some needs that we see surfacing and needs that we are encountering.
Yes, good evening. As we've said all along, we have referenced the remote learning plans, which was part, putting together a remote learning plan within the IEP team, and as a formal part of the IEP, both was a requirement for every single IEP team, but also was a part of our return to learn plan. And we built some tools into our return to learn plan for our teams to use to build some consistency within that process. But we've said all along, and I think this has kind of been a central feature of our return to learn planning, that this whole entire process had to be sort of fluid. We've obviously never dealt with a situation like this before. And it's hard to know exactly what the right thing to do is. And I think the best thing that we can do is to, feel our way and look at our information, including feedback, including our student information, or information from parents, teachers, principals, our teams, and take that, bring it back for consideration, and then modify, adjust. When we think of that in kind of a larger scheme of things, that really is the continuous improvement process. That's how we should operate all the time. That is how we operate all the time. But in this case, it kind of requires maybe even more systematic and immediate adjustment sometimes of strategies. And so that's what we're trying to do, trying to be responsive, and keep a close watch on our processes. And in this case, with the remote learning planning, as we have let that process pan out, we've heard back. I think our teams have done a wonderful job and done exactly what they were supposed to do, you know, holding their meetings. And I think most not all, but most meetings have been held at this point, with school starting today. But we've, you know, of course, had some that are coming in a little later here. But you know, we just got reports back that some of the teams are kind of coming to the conclusion that they just, you know, were kind of coming to some dead ends, that they didn't feel like they had good solutions, that they were able to arrive at very good solutions for students who had very severe and complicated needs, that they weren't getting, you know, solutions in place that they felt really great about to be delivered in the home because of the very specific needs of the student. Anyhow, some possibly, but not all, I think is usually the report that of the student's needs might be able to be met in the home. So because of that, again, in an attempt to be guided by that continuous improvement process, that measure, monitor, adjust, we are coming with recommendation tonight that we take another look at that 100% offsite model and come back and adjust that slightly to be able to offer some on-site services for students only, students with IEPs at this point, for whom we, for targeted services that cannot possibly be provided offsite. And those are services, those identified services, excuse me, that are necessary in order to provide a free, appropriate public education. That's always our bar in special ed. There are a lot of services that we love to provide as part of our larger experience for all students that we really, really love here, that we think are important, that are not necessarily part of a free, appropriate public education. They're just good stuff that we like to do for kids. And then there are FAPE services. That's the core, the core ball of stuff in the middle that kids can't do without. That's the stuff we're talking about. And for most kids, some of that still might be able to be provided offsite. The default always is, how do we do it for everyone else? And if it's possible to do it the same way that we do it for everyone else, or even a similar way, or something resembling that way, then that's how we should do it. But if and only if that is not possible in a similar way that we do it for everyone else, or offsite, in other words, then I would like to recommend that we open it up to and specifically the LEA reps or the principals on the team would be able to put the possibility into the conversation that we may bring a student on site for some targeted amounts of time. So that is my recommendation. I'd like to be able to talk about what you're thinking as a board, because, you know, in our model, we've said 100% offsite, but I'm thinking maybe we would adjust that a little.
I'll jump in. I'm very supportive of that. You know, I'm a special ed teacher, and certainly, you know the levels of need that some kids have just isn't going to be something that's can be done, you know, without being physically present. So I certainly think, you know, and even a lot of the emails, you know, we get that want more in-person instruction often reference, you know, the damage this does to our neediest kids. And so I think as we consider, you know, moving away from a rigid number, you know, that we start to look at putting our focus on those neediest kids first. And certainly with special ed, you know, that rises to the top of the kids that have just more obstacles maybe to their learning than most of the population. So I'm supportive of that.
Thanks.
So Lisa, I mean, this sounds like it's something we can and should do for sure. I'm thinking though, if we had good testing for everyone involved in that in that instruction and receiving instruction, I think to me, offhand, it seems like that we can make it really safe. So I guess I'll go back to Matt then or Chase and say, can we get good testing in this situation? Good testing, I mean, almost 100% in what the Johnson County folks are going to want. Are we going to have to, or are we limited in what we can do to doing symptom checking for both the students as well as all the staff involved?
The symptom checking, we think that we have a good process in place. But if we're going to look at more than that, Charlie, in terms of that testing, again, it's just kind of back to that piece of we can't administer it, but we have protocols that we used in the spring and that we used all summer. And so those would definitely remain in place for anybody that would come on campus. And we would expect all families and the staff to abide by those. But beyond that, it's just, I can't really offer anything else about enhanced testing this evening. I just don't have that detail.
Yeah, I think, our most effective response, and I think we even, have heard this in different circumstances when we have hit a problem or somebody has tested positive, is our management strategy around how then we move to quarantine people and do the contact tracing and make sure that people are no longer exposing themselves to each other in that instance, Charlie. And so I'm not sure that the testing is necessarily our best route or what we would recommend, that trying to test large amounts of people or whether it's students or staff, also because of the delay. I mean, so you could get tested, but then, for that period of time, we don't necessarily know. And so our response almost has to be quicker than that test. And so when somebody's symptomatic, or when we think somebody could potentially have COVID-like symptoms, we have to react then. We can't necessarily wait on the test. And so that's been an effective management strategy for us with activities, with even parts of our employee groups that have worked throughout the summer. And so I think that's what we want to continue to commit to. And especially as we do look towards our hybrid solution and bringing students back onto campus and teachers back onto campus eventually at some point, we know that's going to happen this year, that then, can we effectively manage that when we do run into COVID positive instances, whether they're confirmed with a test or not. And I think we've tried to show you guys that strategy right throughout the summer about how we would handle and respond to that. And what we've heard from again, Johnson County Public Health, and even in conversations with UIHC, is that's what we have to be able to do effectively, that we have to be able to act swiftly and quickly to make sure that we don't allow that spread to continue. So in that instance, I think, with what Lisa's talking about here with effective screening protocols and finding out if we do get somebody that's symptomatic or has a positive test, then how we react in that situation is especially important.
Yeah, one thing I did not say, but I should have said that all of the health and safety protocols, including quarantine measures and all of the guidelines that we've developed with the Department of Public Health and all of that still apply if for students with IEPs, just exactly the same that they do with all other students, because those are health and safety measures that are intended to keep that student, all other students and staff safe. That has nothing to do with the disability. That has really nothing to do with the instruction. Those are health and safety measures that we have to take no matter what. So that doesn't really have anything. But if a student would need to be quarantined, that's a short term. There's nothing else we can do about that, and that is a short term measure that's safety driven. So.
I'll just weigh in, Lisa. I'm so happy to hear the recommendation, and it certainly has my full support. I think the most heart-wrenching emails we've received have been from our special education families. And so this sounds like a way to hopefully provide more and close some of those gaps. And I know how hard you and your team have been working on redoing every single IEP. And I trust that you guys are going to put the same thoughtfulness and hard work into implementing this. So I appreciate you bringing it, and I'm 100% supportive of it.
Yeah, I'll also put a plug in. You know, all the work that we do doesn't compare in any way to the work that really the people that do the really hard work are the principals and teachers and the buildings that work with the kids and families. You know, what we've done over the summer to prepare for getting set up for the meetings is nothing compared to having the meetings, having the hard conversations, trying to figure out the solutions. And I'll tell you that our teachers do not want to see kids struggle with not being successful. Our paras, our family, you know, the people who are actually involved in these conversations, the people, parents on the other end of the programs that don't, that are seeing that their kids are struggling, they don't know, you know, feel like they don't, you know, maybe have the skills they want to have in order to help them. You know, the people who are actually on the ground doing it are the people that are doing the hardest work. Not me, not us who are in an office somewhere. I'll just thank you for that compliment, but I really do want to give the credit to the people who are working boots on the ground.
And I'll just jump in. I think it's a great idea, and I wholeheartedly 100% support it. So thank you for sharing it with the board tonight, Lisa.
Thanks. Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions for me or comments as takeaways? Otherwise, I'm planning on just continuing to monitor this situation. And again, I really want to bring this back to a continuous improvement mindset. You know, this is how we are supposed to live as a school district and as a department in our work. Gather that feedback, gather that information, gather the data, gather the student information, the family information, the building information, the teacher information, and just continue to use it as that formative information that molds our work along the way all the time. So, you know, we'll continue to do that. And we'll just keep a watch on the situation and continue to adjust our approach as we go. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lisa. I think we're going to turn it over to Chase.
So I think I'm next. So good evening again. Well, today marked our first day of our continuation of our grab and go meal program. And we kind of foreshadowed it last week, but we got some great news out of the DE late Friday afternoon that we share with our families that through the waiver that came out from the U.S. Department of Agriculture last week and then filtered to us through the Iowa Department of Education, our free meals for all the students is continued through December. And I think it's just fantastic for all of our families. One of the changes, which is a great change from the summer program, is that once we do return to the hybrid, meals are not only free for pickup location, but they'll also be free in our school settings, which again, I think that's just great news. Allison and her team were hard at work. Of course, nothing's ever easy. So we decided we need a little bit of rain today as we relaunched the program at our 7 sites around the district. But our numbers were still fantastic. We provided over 2,000 SAC meals today, I think 2,035 at the 7 sites. Those are the highest numbers we've had for grab and go meals since before 4th of July, which I think is just awesome. And it was kind of short notice given the changes that took place last week. So we continue to expect to see those numbers climb this week and hopefully stay steady for our families throughout the fall. Again, 7 sites, our secondary schools minus Tate, and then also Hills are where we are serving for 90 minutes a day. And so we encourage everyone to come out and get meals. And again, students do not need to be there, and adults can pick up for more individuals than just their own kids. And again, kudos to Allison and her team for just rocking and rolling. They've been operating at an extremely high level since March, and they did not miss a beat today. So we're very, very excited that we can continue our meal program. We will be providing some additional information as we get closer to going back into hybrid. There will be some things that will look slightly different, but we don't want to confuse anybody right now. So we'll save that information for a little bit closer to when we come back to hybrid. But even other model, I think the big news is meals will continue to be free.
So this is Charlie. Allison. Great work. Really, really great work. We had a comment, I think, recently from a parent who said that they weren't able to get to one of the any of the distribution sites. Do we have an idea about what happens when that's the case, and can we help out there or not?
Well, I do know that, like Chase explained, others can pick up for families, and we've had families do a number of different things where, you know, they take turns maybe picking up for their neighborhood. I know that at Hills today, we had a gal that is going to pick up every day for the Regency Mobile Home Park. And we had a number of those different scenarios throughout our distribution sites. And so that's certainly allowable. And, you know, we would want to work with anybody that we can if they're looking for, you know, we're happy to provide those meals. They give us usually a little bit of a heads up so we can plan for some of those bigger numbers, but we've had good cooperation, it would appear, throughout the district between families.
Okay, so that's what we could do that if
yes.
Principal gets a call from a parent says, I can't get there. Principal could say, well, can you work with some other families who can maybe or something?
Yes,
Okay.
We have seen that throughout the district, different groups and families helping each other out.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks very much, Allison.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, I'll turn it back over to Matt. I think that's the only thing on my list this evening, Matt.
I think tech was the only other thing. If Adam wanted to jump in with.
That's right. I'm sorry about that. Sorry, Adam. I should have thrown it back to you.
Not a problem. I'll jump in. You know, as I won't rehash what a lot of others have said about how the day went. I think there were some clear successes. To be honest, my world has been more filled with the things that were not successes in terms of the things that have come to us. So we knew that our support demand would surge right at the start of this week. We tried to get in front of that a little bit, but even with that, we ended up seeing a surge beyond what we expected, to the tune of about a little over 2,100 new requests received, support requests received since Friday. And we had our staff working through the weekend and on the holiday yesterday, trying to respond to those. At this point, we've resolved about 950 of those requests, which still leaves more than 1,000 to go. So we're working through those as quickly as we can. Most of those relate to things like requests for device repair, accounts, logins, Seesaw Canvas questions, or enrollment issues with Seesaw and Canvas, home internet issues, things like that. So we've implemented some steps to measures to try to improve our response efficiency and the standardization of our responses, but it's still going to take a big effort to dig out from this. So we will keep plugging away to get that done. We weren't helped by whether it's Mother Nature or whatever the case today with multiple power outages throughout the district. impacting several facilities, including the ESC, which forced us to temporarily relocate the help desk and temporarily suspend phone and chat support. So that threw us another little curveball there. But like I said, we have resolved just under 1,000 of those requests. We keep going through them. We do a little bit of prioritization when we have reason to think that something is particularly high priority, but we try our best to respond in the order received otherwise. In terms of home internet provision, I know that that's been a hot topic, so just a quick update on that. In total, we've received 885 requests for home internet, including 220 received within the past 7 days, another 120 received. Of those, 120 received in the past 3 days. We've allocated internet either through internet service to the home, which is our preferred method for a number of reasons, or through provision of hotspots to, at this point, 660 students at least. It's actually a little higher than that, but I'll get into why I'm not totally clear on what exactly the number is. Another 165 have been allocated hotspots, but haven't picked them up or arranged for delivery. We tried through the weekend to contact families. We had staff from our department who were doing home deliveries of hotspots and arranging for pickups at the ESC, that sort of thing. We had a number of families we could not get in touch with. I don't know if the contact information provided was not correct or whatever the case. So in those cases, we've now deployed many of those remaining hotspots, about 165, to the schools where building staff, including SFAs, are working to contact families and address those pickups and deliveries. We've also received another 60 requests. It's actually up a little bit from that now within the last 24 hours. We received another shipment of 200 hotspots today, so we do have enough devices to meet that demand. And we expect to have those allocated and available probably through the buildings again. We feel like that's our most efficient route now that school's in session for those 60 students no later than Thursday. So, currently working on getting those deployed as quickly as possible. Another quick update I do want to share is that IMON, a fiber optic internet provider from Cedar Rapids that has a service area in Iowa City, recently received a CARES grant, which will allow us to work with them to provide, again, direct service to students in identified areas. That'll have an added advantage because of the CARES grant of coming at no cost to the district or the families. So for the duration of the school year. So we're working with them to try to get that service provided to eligible families as well. That was new information. They just received the grant last week. So we're working with them to get that implemented quickly here. Happy to address any questions.
So Adam, this is Charlie, and Diane also. Can you talk about the correspondence between Diane, what you were hearing from principals about actually very good engagement, and what Adam's, what the IT folks are seeing about remaining access and internet problems, or can you just go over your perspective of those, of how those two things interact?
As I had said before, we had some buildings that were at 98, 99% connected with kids, but then we had others that were in the 80s, low 80s. So I think some of what Adam's talking about could be reflective of those buildings that were having those struggles. I do know a lot of the issues, buildings try to handle. At the beginning, I had one principal say, parents were calling saying my laptop's broken, I need a new one, but the teacher librarian or the media secretary or someone was able to kind of talk them through it and figure out what was going wrong and got the laptop up and running. But there, certainly could still be some issues with connecting to the internet that are still out there.
Okay, thanks.
One thing that's worth noting, and I think maybe create some context around the question you're asking, Charlie, is, as we look at these volumes, 2,000 plus support requests and 165 students who some of those may have been allocated hotspots by building staff, but I'm not aware of that yet. You know, when we look at those numbers, those are big numbers. And, you know, for us, we strive during the school year to have our total number of open requests at any given time below 100. That's always our, you know, we want to keep it below 100 all the time. And so these numbers are way higher than what we're comfortable with them being at. So we're going to do everything we can to get them down. You know, the flip side of that, though, is that when you think about our system and you think about the fact that we're supporting 14,000 plus students, you know, the total number of students who are affected by those issues and the total number of those issues that are debilitating in terms of participation in class really, you know, may put in context why, you know, Diane's talking about in many cases seeing those numbers in the high 80s or 90% in terms of students who are able to engage. You know, we have support requests that might be that my speakers aren't functioning properly. They may still work, but there's something wrong. And so that student can still participate.
Yeah, thanks very much, Adam and Diane. And again, I'm not trying to criticize, I'm just trying to get an idea of if there's things that the board should be providing that we, you know, maybe we haven't so far.
Adam, I just wanted to chime in and share my thanks with you and your team. My daughter was one that needed her password reset by the help desk. I got an email at 10:30 at night. And so when you're saying you're working all hours, I really know your team is working all hours and you're doing everything you can to clear these as soon as possible. So great work. I know it's a lot. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I think that is all of our components for tonight. And, you know, whether it's Adam's team or Lisa's team, Diane, Scott, you know, all the different teams we've had, I think in some way we tried to take a minute in cabinet this morning also to recognize that it feels like we made it in some sense, that we made it to the first day. Sometimes at the end of the school year, there's that feeling of you made it. But over the last 6 months, you know, I know it's been arduous planning and preparing and constant changing variables. And we know, you know, to be honest and transparent, we're not meeting everybody's expectations in all regards, and trying to work through those concerns as we go along too, and that not everybody's satisfied with the solutions that we've landed on. But I think as we continue to show you guys those commitments that we tried to stay consistent with throughout that return to learn planning process, we feel good about that and feel like those have been at the front of our planning and decision making as we work throughout. And so it was a different first day of school, but it was a good first day of school in a lot of aspects. We are going to hit bumps. We are going to hit challenges. We are going to have a fluid school year as we continue to navigate this pandemic. And so as we continue to do that, I'm super thankful for the people here on our team that have worked together to do that, and that will continue to persevere and persist throughout this. So Sean, that's the kind of the end of our overall update. If there's other questions on return to learn, we'd be happy to take them, but I know that's what we had planned and prepared for this evening.
And I'd throw it out there for any kind of comments. I know there's a lot going on day to day. You guys hit a lot of topics. So directors, is there anything we didn't cover you'd want to ask about or comment on?
Nope, I'm just going to say thank you, and you guys are doing a great job. It's really appreciated. And you know, as a board member, obviously this has been super stressful, but the fact that I know you folks are handling this makes me feel great that we're moving in the right direction and doing what we can for kids right now.
I absolutely agree with that sentiment. I know that everybody on this call and everybody else out there have been working really hard. And I know not the first day anybody was really hoping for. And I'd really like to give a shout out to all of the kind of the new teachers to our district, and coming in and learning something brand new, and then having it be completely different than what they were expecting also. So congratulations to them and welcome them to the district, and look forward to good things to come. People don't have anything else. We can move on. We have our director liaison report. I don't know if there's any special comments anybody wants to make on anything that they've done with other groups in the last couple of weeks.
Sean, if you don't mind, I'd just like to briefly point out that I and I think others too have been involved with the NEST group, Neighborhood NEST, and I'm hoping that that will become a source of assistance and support for families who are struggling economically and with their workplace or their work schedules. I think that's something I hope we can work with Matt and everyone else and provide as much support as we possibly can as a district for parents whose situation is different than mine.
Thanks, Charlie. Anyone else? All right, so we can move into our agenda setting. Most of you will remember we have a special meeting next Tuesday on the 15th, along with our Return to Learn updates that we're getting every week. We are going to be working on our board vacancy. We'll be discussing the applicants that have submitted their applications and hopefully being able to decide on someone we would like to appoint, which would then happen at the next meeting. So this is a reminder to anybody out there who's listening, who is interested in being considered. The deadline, I believe, is this Friday. Kim can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's at 2 p.m. No, yep, she's held up two fingers. Awesome. So we will do that and then have our Return to Learn stuff. And then for the 22nd, as I mentioned a couple times in the past, we've been kind of putting placeholders in for some various reports and discussion items. And you can see we have a handful of them added on there on the 22nd. We want to make sure, we got a few weeks into the school year and whatever it looked like before we started tackling some of the other items that we need to do. So besides just the Return to Learn, we're going to go back to some of our equity action steps. And then we did throw on a solar update, a discussion on secondary transfer policy, as well as our public use of facilities. Those are three things that we've been asking to get on there. We do have a student representative thing at the beginning of the meeting. So we're going to kind of reach out to the schools and see if they're able to make sure that there are representatives. I think some of the high schools have already selected folks, and I'm not really sure where they're at, but we have that tentatively scheduled on that, which is not a normal time frame. It's the second meeting of the month, but we didn't want to have them do it today on the first day of school. And since September, I believe, has 5 Tuesdays, they can turn around and come at the first meeting in October as well, but there'll be like 3 weeks between those two. So I think there'll be time to have them do that. So we'll try and reach out to the different schools and see if we can make sure we have some representatives do that. So with that, is there anything else directors think we need to add to either the special meeting next week or the full meeting on the 22nd? I guess it's looking at it now. It's not specifically on there on the 22nd that we would install the new board member, but assuming that things go like it should next week, we will make sure we get that on there for the 22nd.
Sean, a question. When we install a new board member, we don't have to go through the whole organizational meeting, do we?
We do not.
Okay, good.
I believe they have to take do they take an oath for, yeah, so I think they would.
Oath of office, yep.
Yeah, an oath of office, but then we can move on. We did discuss we do need to pick a representative for the, I'm failing.
UEN delegate and then
UEN
the
delegate. Thanks, Kim.
IASB too.
So we figured we'd do that after we installed the new board member, and we can pull names out of a hat or throw darts or something.
Just a quick question. After we install the new board member, would we then talk about the policy and governance chair? Because I think that last slacker of a board member didn't get his work done. So we need a new chair.
Yes.
Oh, Ruthina. Oh, Ruthina.
Don't worry, Charlie. He's on here listening.
But yeah, we can, and Lisa was the alternate, so I don't know if she just becomes a full-time member, but either way, we would either need another alternate or another full-time member of the committee. And we should get that done sooner than later and schedule a meeting so we can finish that stuff up for sure. All right. Anything else? All right, if not, that is the end of our agenda. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks again, everybody, on a great first day, and I appreciate all the hard work everyone's doing.